bravefathers.com.
Yes, this is John Paul from bravefathers.com, and I bring you the truth. You know, I am the prophecy. I bring you the prophecy from Family Cards and the truth. And today, I have a very special guest, and he is ostensibly the best family court coach you'll find in the United States of America. And as you know, I'm located in the UK, but we have a very common phenomenon across all courts, not just in the Western world, but you could argue all over the world. So today, we are going to dive deep into the dark truths that nobody talks about. So this is the kind of stuff your lawyer will not tell you. This is the kind of stuff your dad should have told you. This is the kind of stuff that I know you love your mom, but she wanted you to be a good boy, so she did not tell you. We're going to go into the dark truths. So before we begin, I want you to know something. Whatever you're going through, there is a way out. The family courts are a dark place, they are a horrible place. But you can come out. But the only way to come out and get a good result is to do what you've got to do. Do what it takes and make it happen. And today I'm going to bring you Father X in my quest for the truth as the prophecy to give you the tools and knowledge and the insights you need to win in UK family courts. So I'm going to bring you Father X, and he's going to tell you a few things about himself. Father X, are you here
Good
with us?
morning, John Paul.
Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. It's good to be here with you. We've spoken before offline, and it's good to chat with you here with your audience.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. And as you know, it's a very painful thing to go through for our listeners. It has been for us. But at the same time, we always find the good in the bad, right? Like if you want to have a rose, you don't have to put some manure on it. A little bit of shit always makes things better. So let's find a way forward. Father X, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am Father X. I make videos on YouTube. My YouTube channel is Father X, How Fathers Can Win Child Custody. You can also find my videos on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, even Rumble. And I'm an anonymous father. I have an entire life outside of this, raising my son and working. But I call myself Father X because I'm just another generic father who went through the family court system, right? You could call me Victor or John or Paul. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what my name is. It's the same process for everybody. I could be your cousin. I could be your brother. I could be your, coworker. So I'm just another generic Father X, and I made my video series on YouTube to teach other fathers how to navigate family court because I went through it for 3 years. I know the people in family court are completely incompetent, biased against fathers. Any negative thing you want to say, I will double it. And because I know it's broken, I know it does not lead to good outcomes for children. So my educational series is there to teach fathers how to get through family court, to get equal parenting time or primary parenting time, to help you think about what family court is supposed to be, how it's supposed to work, how to think intelligently about what's best for your child, and then how to make the court do that, because they won't do it on their own.
Yes, you're absolutely right. So let's jump right in. And by the way, his name was Robert Paulson. If you know, you know. I don't know if you get the reference, but his name was Robert Paulson. So here's the thing. So I agree with you in principle, but where I want us to start from is this. A lot of people don't realize that the family court is essentially biased against fathers. The fathers, it's not a place where you go and present your case. There are some differences between the UK and the States. some things are better, some things are worse. But usually, what happens is the father gets fleeced financially, and either doesn't get to see his kids at all, or once in a while, and so on and so forth. So we'll dive into that. But where I want us to start from is, I don't think the system is broken. Because to claim that the system is broken, we would have to start from the premise that at one point it was whole. But do you think at a point in time there was a just family court system for the X?
That's a great question, because a lot of people say that phrase that you said. It's not broken, it's doing what it's intended. But I do believe that theoretically, whoever started family court on day one said, let's figure out what's best for children and decide where the children live. And after a separation or divorce, where should they live? What's best? How do you decide that? And then there has to be a system in place, an institution to make that happen. So I think that's a wholesome idea. But then what's the next step? Step two is hire a bunch of gender biased people. Okay, so now it's broken immediately. And then you create the financial incentives. After several years of this, there's this child support incentive. It's especially in the United States. I know it's a little bit different in Canada and the UK, but in the United States specifically, there is child support from the federal government to the state governments, where the federal government gives them reimbursements and bonuses. The more child support money they collect, the more bonuses and incentives they get from the federal government. So it created an incentive to the states, a wrong incentive, an incompetent incentive that says maximize child support. And then if you're the state, how do you maximize child support? Well, you don't give parents equal parenting time. You make one a winner, one a loser, and you force the loser to pay child support because you say, oh, you only see your kids 10% of the time. You should pay the other parent all of this child support. And the fraud comes in, Jean-Paul, where when you make that custody decision as a judge, if there's no actual intelligent analysis behind that decision to make one parent primary and the other one like a weekend parent, then there's fraud happening, right? So you have judges that have a financial incentive to give one parent custody, and then you have judges that are biased. And I think, I mean, nobody knows for sure, but I would estimate 80 to 90% of judges engage in these bad behaviors 80% of the time.
I agree with you. So in the UK, it's similar. From my understanding, which I've not double checked, the company that collects child maintenance here, they are a private company that has been contracted by the government. They are horrible to deal with, and they are very rogue, and nobody checks them because, nobody checks anything that the women's organizations do over here. So in a similar way, they get more money when the parent, when one parent has to pay extra. But what's interesting is that over here is what they try to do is, even if it's 50-50, they still try to collect money from the father, believe it or not. Because every child in the UK gets a little bit of money from the government if they're in school. So whoever gets that money, they consider them a primary parent, which is BS. There's no law that says that. So you could argue against it and say, no, we share in all the duties equally. But that is a piece of information that a lot of fathers don't know, which is why we are here to look into those things. So essentially, we can agree that there's a financial incentive, right? Because when you go into court and you look around, when you think about it, you are the only one who's really paying. Because in most cases, in the UK, for example, the mother, if she's on a low income or a lower income threshold, she'll get legal aid. So her lawyer will be paid for, right? The judge is paid, the legal advisors, the judges collect, everybody is getting paid. But you are the only one getting paid. You are the only one paying as the father. Would you agree that is an accurate picture as well in the States?
That happens very often. Yes. In the United States, the mother does not get legal aid automatically even if she claims domestic violence. And the United States is very fractured because the United States has 50 states with 50 sets of laws. So there's a lot of fracturing. There's a lot of commonality, but the
Yes.
details get split. But yeah,
Okay,
I
interesting.
can see what you're saying though, that often it's the father who's paying. And if you're married though, and you both get lawyers, the money comes out of marital assets.
Exactly. And usually it's the father's marital assets that cover the bill, So
Yeah.
that's really painful. So let's get a bit practical. So I was speaking, to someone, and he said something that really hit me. And he says, "I'm going to trust my lawyer." So this is a father that is completely new to the process, right? So when he says, "I'm going to trust my lawyer," it took me back all the way to when I started my case. So just to give a little bit of background, I was fighting for at least 50-50. But in UK, they don't give, the best you can hope for in most cases is 50-50 because we don't have custody here, right? We have what we call the resident parent and non-resident parent. So the best outcome in most cases is, to get 50-50. However, you can't get, full residence or have to be the resident parent as a father, but that is a more complex process and it's very expensive and it takes a lot of work and is beyond what we can talk about today. It's
Are you
something I would
saying
have
that
done.
the
Yeah,
mother
go on.
becomes, are you saying that the mother in the UK becomes the primary residential parent at the beginning almost all the time?
Yes. So basically, this is where I want us to look at the practice. So let me finish what happened, and then
Hmm. Yeah.
and we'll come back to this point. And if I get lost, bring me back because that is the crux of the issue. So he says he's gonna trust his lawyer, and he thinks he's going to get 50-50, right? And the child is very young. Obviously, for privacy's sake, I'm not going to mention the age, but the child is very young. So at that age, usually the child stays with the mother. Regardless of the age, the child will usually end up staying with the mother. And the father has to then prove why the child should be with him at all. Why? Because in this country, in the United Kingdom, the reason why we don't have custody is parents do not have rights to their children. Parents don't
Hmm.
have rights to their children. It's the children that have right to have their parents involved in their lives. However, there is no specific division of time in the law that determines child arrangements. So if, which is what some fathers have, if a father gets to send one postcard a month to the child, the law has been fulfilled. Do you understand
Wow.
what I'm saying? And a lot of fathers don't understand that. So when their lawyer tells them, "Oh, you have the right to be involved," if they do tell them the child has the right for you to be involved with them, and you will have contact, and the government gives statistics that which they have done, oh, so many fathers have had successful applications. What it means is it's successful according to the law. So if you send a postcard to your child, which initially they did that to me, they said I could send a letter to my little boy before he could even speak. I could send a letter to him, and that fulfills the law. That means I'm involved with the child, and the court can go home and say my application was successful.
That's unbelievable.
It
That's
actually
because
is.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's not even parenting, right?
You are correct. So because we are going down a rabbit hole, but I want us to get to a very dark truth that a lot of fathers don't realize, and I think when they understand this, that's going to give them the right mindset to win. Because I think there's a grieving process that you have to go through before you can be effective in court, because you will have to accept a certain dark truth, which we will arrive at. But what are your thoughts on what I've said so far?
Um, I think I think it's absurd that in the law it's so vague that children have the right to be with their parents and that can be fulfilled by one receiving one letter. I mean, in reality, children when they grow up from the age of 2, 3, 4, right? They want the love and the protection of both of their parents, right? And they're innocent. Like children are
Yes.
so innocent, you can't read their minds, but you can see it when you're a parent. You just know. But then when they're 5, 6, 7 years old, children start talking to other children and they start
Yes.
thinking about my mommy does this and my daddy does this.
Yes.
And you hear it from your friends. And then your friends say, "What does your daddy do?" And you say, "I don't know. I don't see my daddy. Why don't I have a daddy?
Yes.
What's missing? That's weird." And it doesn't have to be that way.
No. No, you are correct. And I took my son to school, and I looked at how different things are now, because the kids don't say good morning to the parents. When I was growing up, if you wanted to speak to your friend, you first say good morning to the parent,
Mhm.
or at least hello. You acknowledge the parent, and then you talk to your friend. Or the kid says, "Oh, dad or mom, can I go play with, Jake or whatever," right? And I
Mhm.
think the reason why they don't say hello, this is my view, is because ultimately children will have to say hello to the fathers who bring the kids. And my strong theory and the prophecy which I'm bringing is that they don't want to acknowledge fathers in any way, shape, or form. So the whole system of lack of respect, even for parents, is basically to find a way to remove fathers from the situation. What do you think about that?
I think that happens a lot. With it, I think that's. I
Yes,
don't know who's orchest.
sorry to cut.
Go ahead. Go
Sorry
ahead.
to cut you. Forgive me. I know I'm cutting you, but to what you said, and that's why we also don't celebrate Father's Day in most schools here. But sorry, carry on.
Wow, you don't celebrate Father's Day in the UK? In
They
schools, in
do.
schools.
Most schools, a few do, but most don't. And even on the Father's Day, when you go to like to supermarkets, there's like a tiny table that's usually dirty, and 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 a lot, because a lot of mothers hate Father's Day because they stop the children from seeing the fathers, so it upsets them, So it's just to and I know I interrupted you, so
Mhm.
do forgive me, but because you mentioned that, and because the kids ask, oh, what about my daddy? So if you do Father's Day, and 60% of the kids don't know who their father is, or see them once a month or once every 6 months, are you with me? Then there's that problem to overcome.
Wow. So basically, the family court breaking of the families has led to almost canceling Father's Day, is what you're saying, because
Yeah.
it becomes too painful.
Listen, I've seen court cases, court papers where literally the mother asks that the father doesn't contact the child on the Father's Day, because according to the mother, the child gets upset when they see all the best dad in the world. Where's my? Because I had my mug here. T-shirts and
Right.
stuff like that. Of course, it's the mother who gets upset, but they make it look like the child doesn't like it. So I've seen a mother literally request that in court.
Well, what's interesting is there's two solutions to what you just said. One is completely isolate the child from the concept of Father's Day and isolate the father. But there's another alternative. Surprise, surprise.
Mhm.
You can actually have the father involved in the child's life weekly, every single week, during school days, during weekends, significantly. And then on Father's Day, you can celebrate that. That's a whole alternative to canceling
Yeah,
Father's Day, right?
yes, yes.
God
You
forbid
are
we use that
correct.
alternative.
You are very correct, and that's the you see. Let me just get into it, because we don't have much time, and I have to bring the prophecy to the people. So let me just jump straight into what I think it is. Essentially, what we must understand and accept, which we know but we don't accept, is that the state sees men as expendable. That's it. When you go into court, the laws are built such that the state has control over your children. Period. Not only
Right.
your children, your finances, your schedule, everything you do, the state wants to control it. I know it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but let's look at the reality on the ground. It's like you said, it sounds unbelievable. And I've even had people argue, oh, yeah, parents have rights. The easiest way to piss off a judge in UK family courts is to say, I have the right to see my child. They are very quick to tell you, You don't have any rights. And in fact, the fact that you said that is going to be used against you and said, oh, you are such a selfish parent. You are thinking only about yourself. I'm telling you, this is how it is.
Right.
You are thinking about yourself. You're not thinking of the child's right to see you. You're thinking of your right to see your children, your child or your children. So,
Yeah.
so you cannot even say that. And a lot of parents think, who watch this, would say, oh, John Paul is crazy, which I am. But that doesn't change the truth that you don't have the right to see your child. Neither does the mother. But here's the kicker. People like me, people like you have worked hard for years, helping fathers, helping ourselves to win, right? We can agree on that, right?
Yes.
But guess what? We are so good at what we do, at winning these cases, at getting results for fathers. In this place, now they are changing the laws. And do you know what the new law is going to be?
Oh, in the UK, yes, there was a
Yes.
recent change about the protection of the child, right?
No,
Or
no,
what
no.
is it?
That's the excuse they are using. So right now, the child has the right to see the parent, right? So there's a presumption that the parent will be involved with the child. And we already established that even sending a postcard once a month, once a year, is considered being involved with the child. The new law is going to be there is no such presumption. In other words, there is no presumption that there needs to be a parent, any parent in the child's life. What do you think about that?
Which means what? Is it? Does that mean that it's now open for grandparents or foster homes?
I think, well, there's something. I've not looked that much into the public law, which is where foster parents live, but foster parents will be the more likely direction rather than grandparents, because grandparents struggle to see their kids here. If the parents can't see the kids, the grandparents will usually struggle, except in a few public law cases. But that's a different animal altogether. But yes, but that means essentially, if the child only has one parent, the law will be fulfilled. Does that make sense?
Oh, okay. So the law basically says we only need one parent. It doesn't have to be the father or the mother
No, the
combined.
law says we don't need. The law says we don't need either parent.
So we can have zero parents. Does it imply that we can
Yes,
have zero parents, and that means that foster
precisely.
homes can take your child?
So from the research I've done, in effect, yes. Technically, no, but in effect, yes. In effect, yes. So because the best of my understanding, the public law. So if a social worker takes you to court, or the local authority that governs the social workers takes you to court, they will be using the old law. However, they have the right to supersede that law, right? Already.
Mm-hmm.
But now, when you go to the family court, so now when you go to family court, let's say the mother says, look, this guy is an abusive monster, right? Because that is the trick that you normally use. So the
Right, the
mother will
silver
say,
bullet. The silver bullet.
the silver bullet, precisely, which is what I want us to talk about more deeply in a moment. So they will say, the father is an abusive monster. Today, the law is, okay, he's an abusive monster, but you know what? It's usually the child's best interest to have the parent involved. Father, every month you send one postcard. The law is now complete. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's really silly.
But with the new law, hey, the father is an abusive monster. Oh, is he? All right, let's just get rid of him. And the law will be fulfilled.
So you're
This is,
basically saying that the system now is like 95% bad, and it's going to 99% bad.
that's what it looks like.
Yeah. You also mentioned, Jean Paul, the your friend, or the person you were coaching, who said, "I'm going to court and I'm going to trust my lawyer."
Yes.
Right. You recall starting with that, and I think you were about to also say that's terrible. That's a terrible idea, right?
That's a
Which I would
horrible,
agree with.
yes. Yeah, so let's hear your thoughts first on that.
Now, have you ever spoken, Jean Paul, in public about like what you do in your career, like your background, or no?
Well, to people who don't know this
Yeah,
stuff.
to people who don't know you.
No, 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 no,
Okay,
no, no.
okay.
I don't.
Then let's not talk
Yeah.
about that. Like whoever's listening, I want you to think about what you do for your job in your career. Maybe I don't know, maybe you're a software engineer, for example, right? And if you're
Mm-hmm.
a software engineer, you do coding on the computer, right? Like you go to Amazon.com and there's a button that says, shop for this item, add it to the cart,
Yes.
apply this credit card, apply that credit card, apply a gift card, give me a refund. All of that is functionality that connects to a lot of back end systems, right? There's a complex web of
Yes.
methodology and thought. Now,
Yes.
would you ever say, okay, I'm taking the day off as a software engineer, and I'm going to let the building custodial manager or the plumber now sit at my chair and do the job, right?
No,
Or
we would not do
the
that.
chef in the kitchen just come in and do the job, or some police
No, no,
officer
no, no.
just said you can't do the job, which is it's a
Mm-hmm.
basic concept called competence, right? We
Correct.
all have different skill sets. Now, in court, what really matters, what I really believe matters the most is when two parents don't live together, when they separate, there has to be intelligent thought about what happens to that child, right? And
Correct.
ultimately, I don't care if the father gets primary parenting time or the mother, or if it's equal, or somebody gets sole. My primary concern is that there has to be intelligent and competent thought, and that's not negotiable because every child deserves intelligent thought, which is very
Yes.
different than automatically thinking the mother gets custody, right? Intelligent thought means like
Yes.
20, 50 hours of thinking about the case, the parents, and the facts. Now,
Yes.
competent people produce competent work product. I learned this in family court because those people in family court are not competent. It's like asking the chef at your local McDonald's to do your software engineering job for you for the day, right? The lawyers in the
Yes.
courtroom, the judge in the courtroom, her lawyer, your lawyer. If the child is assigned a lawyer, if there's CAFCAS or Child Protective Services, all of those people are completely incompetent. I've never met a more incompetent and inferior group of people in my life. It's like asking a bunch of midgets to go play NBA basketball against Michael Jordan and LeBron James. Like it's
Yeah.
that bad. That's the gap.
So I agree with you to a degree, though, because I was, I don't know, but I wouldn't call it luck because luck comes with preparation. But I've had some good judges, but I had some bad ones as well, which is why I had to win my court case by appeal. And obviously, when I first said what I wanted to do, my lawyer laughed. When I said I wanted a shared live, the first time I said I wanted a shared live with arrangement, the whole courtroom laughed. Like everybody laughed, believe it or not. They were
And
like,
that tells you something. That's a clue.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so that's when I said I decided, okay, I'm gonna, I'm gonna get it, and I did get it. And I was told, and here's what's interesting: even the people who help fathers were against me doing my appeal. They were like, "Oh, less than 2% of appeals in family court succeed. Blah blah blah. Why do you want to do this? Why don't you wait? Why don't you do this?" They were literally angry with me, which brought me to such confusion about
Hmm.
why these people that are supposed to be supporting fathers
Hmm.
are so against it. But then what I realized is, there are good judges, but they are usually those are the ones who usually end up moving up to the higher courts as well. Because I've read tons of case law as you have, and then you
Hmm.
realize the lower courts don't actually follow the law a lot of the times. So
Right.
one of the things in my coaching, which I think is similar to you, is I'm like, look, let's figure out the law that applies to you. I think I'm giving out too much, but let's be generous because people need help. So
Let's go
one of
there.
the
Go
tips
there. Go for it.
yeah, one of the tips I have, which I've used, is learn all the laws that are applicable to your case. Right? Look at the case law. There is an 80% chance that the lower court will ignore that law. Let them, and then you obviously put the best case possible, but you do it in such a way that when it goes up to the appeal court, you can clearly say, look, these judges were wrong in law because this is what the precedence is. And then that's how you often win. So the reason why I say you can't trust your lawyer is your lawyer by ethical standards is not allowed to bring you the prophecy as I am. They cannot predict the future. but I can't. So I know that there is allegations coming. I know 5 of the allegations that are coming before they were made. I don't know the exact nature of them specifically, but I know the category within which the allegations are going to be made. I
Fair.
know your
Yeah.
reactions to those allegations, right? Because you've seen it so many times. And I know what's going to come to you, and I know the order that's going to be made. Do you see what I'm saying? But you can predict it 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months ahead, 9 months ahead, sometimes a year ahead. Why? Because the people who support the mothers, and I use the word mothers loosely here because I don't respect parents who deprive children of their parents, of the other parent.
Right.
The people who support the mothers, they have a system by which they work. So you know what they are going to do, but you can read the case law. After you've read like 10 cases, you know the steps because you've seen most of there are different varieties
Yes.
of how they go, but you know more or less, what's going to happen. So right from day one, you have to plant seeds to fight those things. So for example, if you go and
Correct.
say, you can't go and say, I want 50-50 from the beginning, and then 6 months later, when after she's brought the allegations, oh, I think she's a bad mother. They're gonna say, wait a minute, on your so here you call the C100, on your C100 form, which is the initial application, right? You said you wanted 50-50. Is that correct? Yes. Well, if she's such a bad mother, why did you want to split it 50-50? Do you get what I'm saying? You are done.
Yes.
But you
Yes.
made that mistake at the beginning,
Yes.
and they know you are going to make that mistake. And your lawyer is not going to tell you this because your lawyer gets paid regardless of whether you win or lose.
So
And
what
guess
would you
what?
say, Jean
Yeah.
Paul? I'll give you my thoughts on what I would say, but what would you say in that
Yeah.
form on day one when she surprised you with family court, and now you have to fill out this form very quickly, and you don't know anything about the law or what to do? What would you say?
Okay, so this is not legal advice. I'm not qualified to give legal advice,
Right.
but here's what I would
Neither.
do.
None
Here's
of
what
us are.
yes. So here's what I would do in theory. I'll straight away say, look, if it's true that she is abusive, I would say she is abusive and the child should live with me, and then take it from there. That's your best shot, and don't just say it. You have to have proof and evidence that it's true, right? It has to be true as well. I'm not saying go and lie on the form, but if it is true, don't be a nice guy, which is what most fathers do. I'll put my hand up. I've made some of these mistakes, obviously. Don't be a nice guy and
Mhm.
say, oh, she's a great mother, only 6 months later to make accusations. That's what I would
I
say.
think that's very fair. That's a great point you made. I did something different, and I said at the beginning, I want primary custody. And I listed out 10 or 15 extremely violent and abusive things that she did,
Yeah,
and her
yeah,
mental health issues. And so
yeah,
I did one more than what you just said. I didn't start off like you said with equal shared parenting. I started with I want primary, except that
no, no,
they completely ignored me. They totally ignored everything I said. It didn't matter what I said. It's like pretending I don't exist. And they gave her primary custody without justification at the beginning for 3 years.
yeah, yeah, I agree with you. No, no, what I said is I would go and say the child should live with me. I'm
Yeah,
saying most fathers try to go for 50-50, which is a mistake. That's
I
what I'm saying.
agree.
So I
I
agree with you
agree.
on that one.
I
Yeah,
think
which is,
one piece of language that people can use, Jean Paul, is the, like I said earlier, deciding where a child lives requires a lot of serious and intelligent thought. And
yes,
and it took me a year and a half to really think through. And I read hundreds of appellate court cases where I learned
yes,
about other families and other situations, and what
yes,
does it mean when a parent is very good at educating their child, and what does it mean when a
yes,
parent is abusive? What does it mean when a
yes,
parent is abusive towards a spouse but they're very good to the child? Right? Think about
yes,
that complication. I
yes,
read so many
yes.
things that I learned a lot, and you can't know that on day one. So
No.
one guideline I tell people is, in any court document, like on the very beginning, you can say something vague and not committal, like I will evaluate the circumstances and think about what is ideal for my child, whether I should have equal parenting time or the majority of parenting time. I will think about it based on the facts, which is not, it basically says, I don't want to see my child once a month. It says I want equality or better, which is a good starting point. But it also
Yes,
leaves
yes.
everything open later. And you can say, I'm going to evaluate the circumstances, because you have
Yes,
not
yeah,
evaluated the circumstances when you show up by surprise.
yeah, but the difference here is in the UK, they give you just one tiny little box to state that, and they do refer to that little tiny box, and they give you some boxes to tick as well. So you are expected to come into court with your position, So the court is not, the UK courts are not here to they will say themselves, they're not here to parent or to make parenting decisions, which is arguable, but that's what they say to you. So when you come through, if you don't know what what you want up front, they will decide for you anyway.
Wow.
But
Even if
yes,
you, even if the mother did plan this for 1 year and you didn't know because you just had no idea, and then she serves you papers to go to court, you go to court 1 week later, you have like 1 week to figure this out.
I mean, you wouldn't go to court 1 week later. There's lots of delays.
Oh,
So
okay.
the trick, yeah. So basically, the process here is you make the application. Whoever makes the application, then we have what we call Kafkas. Kafkas is the court. What's it called? Court and family. Basic court advisory service. I can't remember the full name now. So they are the court advisory service. They are essentially
Mhm.
social workers who represent the interest of the child officially, right? That's the
Right,
official
right.
story.
You mean the
So
mother?
social. So basically, what happens is once the application is put through, there's a safeguarding call, which happens 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, sometimes 6 weeks after, which decides if there are any immediate concerns. So you have to know how to prepare for that call itself, because that call is going to decide the rest of your child's life. And a lot of fathers, and it hurts me so much, they underestimate it because they think they've watched the Lincoln Lawyer with is it McConaughey? I always get his name wrong. McConaughey, I can't ever pronounce his
Mackenzie.
name. No, isn't it the guy who
Oh,
did
Matthew
Lincoln Lawyer?
McConaughey. Oh, Matthew
Yes, yes.
McConaughey. Yeah.
Yes, so they've watched movies like that. Do you know what I mean? Or they watch some LA Law, or some kind of TV drama with lawyers in it, and think that's what's going to happen in court. You understand what I'm saying? But that first phone call with the social workers who advise the court will have a recommendation at the end of it, and that recommendation is going to be the starting point for your case. You understand
Right,
what I'm saying? So
right.
90% of your case is really fighting the Kafka's recommendation at some point. So there's a lot of nuances, but your lawyer cannot tell you this because they have to deal with the tangible. They have to deal with evidence. They cannot tell you, oh, you're going the first time. The lawyer cannot tell you she's going to abuse you of things you've not done. Their ethical code does not allow them to tell you that. Does that make
Well, that's
sense?
interesting, because I would
Yeah.
say that if a lawyer was going to explain to you everything about family court, if you watch my videos on YouTube, there's about 50 of
Mm-hmm.
them, and they're about 15 minutes each, because the way I did them is I have to teach you everything, every angle about family court, dealing with your
Yes.
lawyer, dealing with her lawyer, dealing with the
Yes.
clerks, everything.
Very
It's
important.
right.
Yes.
You can't learn family court in a 3-minute video. That's not how it
No.
works. So I made
No.
50 that are 15 minutes each, which will take you about 14 hours to watch. So if
Mm-hmm.
you ask your lawyer to teach you what I teach you for free in 14-hour videos, 14 hours times what, 500 pounds an hour or whatever the number is,
Yes.
like
Yes.
that's a lot of money. And they don't even, I would bet, Jean Paul, that most lawyers in the United States, it's common knowledge in the world of lawyers that family
Mm-hmm.
lawyers are the least competent lawyers out of all of them. Real estate lawyers, intellectual property lawyers, corporate lawyers, contract lawyers. Family lawyers are the dumbest and most incompetent. So I would bet most lawyers in family court cannot teach you what I teach you or what Jean Paul teaches you, the nuance and the reality.
That's the truth. But see, it's hard for people to believe this because, again, they are trained by the media. They are
Right.
trained by movies, by what people tell them, and people lie, and lawyers lie. And also,
Yes.
the lawyers don't have to. They don't have to be competent because there is a cookie cutter solution. Let me tell you how bad it is.
Hmm.
So the mother says this guy is an abuser. She goes online. There's an official form, right? An official form. It's official. Official page where it says, "Oh, apply here for what we call a non-molestation order." I believe you call it what's it
A
called?
restraining order or an
A
order of
restraining order.
protection. Hmm.
That's correct. That's correct. So she goes online, fills the form, presses submit. Guess what happens next?
Somebody on the other side prints it out, signs it, sends it to the police. They enforce it immediately, no questions asked. True or false?
Almost there. Almost there. What happens is the women's organizations give accreditations to law firms. If you are accredited by the women's organization, your name will appear. Basically, all the law firms in a certain radius of where the mother filled the form will appear, and to say, tick this box if you want this law firm to receive your application. So
Uh-oh.
the application is not going to any official body. It's going to a lawyer. You
Wow.
understand what I'm saying? A law firm. And then the law firm, based on that, can then apply for at least £20,000 of legal aid for your case. You understand? By the way, fathers can get legal aid too. I got legal aid in the beginning, but I got rid of the lawyer because I realized I'm better off on my own. So even if when
Right.
I had my lawyer paid for, I realized lawyers can't change the outcome. But the problem is people only realize that a year into their case, six
When
months
it's too
later,
late.
9 months into the case, when it's too late. So then we're doing damage control, which is very difficult. And I've done some, what I call, masterpiece of legal maneuvering that barristers, lawyer, we call the barristers here, those who speak
Hmm.
for you in court, and solicitors were like, "Oh, this cannot happen." I was like, "It can happen if we plan a year and a half ahead, 2 years ahead." And lo and behold, it did happen that way. That's why I say I bring the prophecy.
Yeah,
You
that's right.
understand?
That's right.
But the problem is, but think about this: the women's organizations gives accreditations to the lawyers. Therefore, it is in the lawyer's interest to stay in the good books of the women's organizations. Does that not make sense?
Because it's a cycle of customers. They get a
It's a
cycle of
cycle of
customers from
customers.
the organization, and if the lawyer
Exactly.
helps the mothers commit fraud.
So if the lawyer now helps you, the father, and let's say the 100 fathers win, because those same women are not just going to the lawyer, they're also going to the women's organization because there's the independent domestic abuse worker, there's this worker, there's that consultant, there's that therapist, everybody getting the accreditation. Do you get what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
if you're helping, let's say, 100 fathers as the lawyer and you're accredited, there's going to be a knock on your door. It's like, excuse me, sir, the women are complaining because you are beating them in court. Like, what's going on here? Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
So it's
Yes.
like a
Interesting.
vicious cycle. And my suspicion is there's something like that in the States, but it's deeply engraved, like shell corporations, things, non-governmental bodies that are connected to the government and so on and so forth. I think there's a network. And again, you could say it's a conspiracy theory. But when we look at the parallels, you see that the similar thing is happening. Because you have the marriage counselors, and I've seen marriage counselors testify against fathers or give mothers ammunition against fathers. It's a whole industry. Wouldn't you agree on that?
Yes. And what you and I can do also, we can think strategically. Imagine, Jean Paul, that you and I were the chief executive officer of the family court industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
What do we want in the family court industry? We want we want to grow the business. We want more
Yeah.
judges, more lawyers. We want more people to go through family court. So imagine this strategically, Jean Paul. You and I run family court in all of England or the United States, whichever one. And let's say last year we had 100,000 people go through family court.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make that 300,000 people in two
Mm-hmm.
years from now. because if we make it 300,000 people, we can hire more judges to make more money, more clerks to make more money, lawyers will make more money, we'll get more child support money from the federal government. So how do you go from 100,000 families in family court to 300,000? Here's a trick, right? A strategic maneuver. If I rule in favor of the mother 90% of the time, then everybody will know, right? It'll be common knowledge. If every time two people go to court, I make a minor ruling in favor of the mother all the time, give her what she wants, society will learn that women always win in family court. And what does that mean? Every time there's a divorce or separation, the father will never want to go to family court, but the mother will, because she knows that in court she's going to get what she wants. So on the margin, in that middle group of people, women are incentivized to go to family court because they know they're going to win. However, alternatively, if you and I created a system where we started off with equal parenting, nobody's going to win, right? On day one, I'm making both parents equal. Guess what? Everybody's going to know, why would I go to family court? There's almost no reason. I'm going to be treated equal. So we can just settle equally, right? So that'll be fewer people. So I can grow my business by picking one side, men versus women. And then women in society will always think, culturally, I should go to family court. Now, more cases, more divorcing parents will take the family court route because it only takes one person to decide everybody should go to family court in that family. What do you think about that? And what do you think?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly my thoughts. And you see, what makes it worse? So in a previous broadcast of mine, I mentioned a story of Frank. And Frank had a daughter, right? So when I asked Frank, what's the one thing you're going to teach your daughter? He says, I'm going to teach her that if a man is not willing to jump through a few hoops to prove his worth, he's not worth being with her. He's not worthy of her. So that's what he taught his daughter. And then months later, when his child was separated from him by the mother, because the mother accused him of abuse, he went to family court. And then when he went to the family court, the judge says, well, we're going to have to do a 90-day report. It's 91 days here, but it's 90 days. And that report will show whether or not you can be in your child's life. And then Frank said, yes, but why do I have to do this? Why do I have to prove myself? And the judge said, well, if you're not willing to jump through a few hoops, you're not worthy of being in her life. What's my point? We have the mentality of putting females on a pedestal in the society.
Yeah.
When we go into court, is the same mentality continued?
Yes. Magnified, not even continued, magnified.
Exactly. So we you see, like the way I was able to get through it is I had to be honest with myself. I realized I devalued myself as a man. So as an effect, I attracted a similar attention from the female. You understand what I'm saying? Because I devalued myself already. I put her to a degree on a pedestal. What did save me though was I used to date a lot before, right? So very early on, I realized something was not matching, and it was my own issues, some of the religious upbringing and stuff that was affecting my thinking. But I was able to quickly realize that, wait a minute, something is wrong. But where fathers get trapped is they see the female virtue as a constant. So when she's acting up and being abusive, they don't adjust. They see themselves as the variable and the woman as the constant. So they don't adjust and say, well, now she's changed who she is and she's being abusive. No, they keep it constant and they say, she's still virtuous, she's still good, therefore I must be bad.
Interesting. That's an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah. So then what happens is they stay caught up. So even when they get into the divorce, and I've seen situations where even after all the abuse, after all the negative things in court, the father still has a tear in his eye saying, why don't we give it one more chance? Not realizing that the honest truth was he never had a chance. And I'll go as far as to say that even before he met her, and I'm going to show you something right now,
Hmm.
Before he met her, he was already chosen in most cases. I know a lot of fathers don't want to hear this, they don't like it, but they were chosen specifically because the female knew she was going to take advantage of him. And I'm going to do a series on that because there's a deep psychology to this that, and I think Carl Jung actually noticed some of this stuff in his work. We're not going in that direction now. Uh, but when it comes to the psychology of individuation, that is
Hmm.
like a key psychology for fathers to rescue themselves in this situation. But the psychology is such that, and I'll share with you, you know, perhaps when we have another discussion. You know, this deep. But what I'm trying to say is, the governments have profiles, psychological profiles on people, and I found documents because, like you said, there's a lot of incompetence that are left online. Some are left online, just because anybody could read them. Some are just carelessness by
Hmm.
government workers, because they're like, oh, just leave this link and they get indexed. They have profiles. So like you and I doing this work, Father X,
Yeah.
there's a profile on us. There's a profile. I know it sounds crazy to people until they go through the process and you lose all your money and you lose your kids and you're like, oh shit, Father X and John Paul were right.
You think the
But
profile is one individual or a general type of psychological profile?
at this stage, I would say this is what I think. And I know a little bit of how these things work. There is a seed profile which is not accurate because we are not yet, and I don't want to get on that scale where we are a big threat, right? So let's say like now I've mentioned Andrew Tate's name. Just by saying his name, we are already flagged, right? So forgive me if you didn't want to be
Hmm. Hmm.
associated, but we are already flagged. So he has like a proper file. You understand what I'm saying? But you and I have like a general file and a seed file, which says, which is mostly automated. These guys are the ones, and I'll show you proof. And I think I'm gonna have to do a series on this, but I don't want to go too deep into this because I don't want to make myself a target. As crazy as
Right,
it
right.
sounds,
That's fair.
by
That's a
you, I'm
separate
sure you're
series.
aware. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. But
Hmm.
but 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 the raw files online on people, like Joe Rogan, all these people. Not only that, on their audiences. So the people who listen to us, there's a profile. And this is not just, you can search for this stuff for yourself if you want to. I'm talking to the audience now. This is not like a conspiracy theory. There are profiles that are being made that governments pay for. The Canadian government, UK government, United States government, that they pay researchers and organizations to make these profiles to understand the psychology. The point being, when you go into the court, somebody understands your psychology. I understand your psychology. You understand what I'm saying? They understand it even better. So a lot of the traps that are set for you in court are based on your psychology, if that makes sense. So I
I
mean,
believe that's true. I don't normally think about it that way, but I do believe that there's somebody planning that in family court, and planning these traps. Yeah, that makes
so,
sense.
so half of what the lawyer says, the opposition's lawyer says, they know the judge don't give a fuck. They don't know the judge doesn't care, but they know it hurts your feelings. They know it gets to you. It
Yes,
destabilizes you. You understand? You think it's about the judge. Listen, once you understand this stuff on a deeper level, it's not even about your ex anymore because you are really going against the state. You understand what I'm saying?
that's
And it's the
interesting.
judge
That's
that
an interesting point about the opposition lawyer. They're doing it to destabilize you, to make you
yes.
feel devalued so that you become either very depressed and you quit, or you become very angry and you explode, and then they just proved you're abusive.
It- and they just proved you're abusive. But the judges have a different way. I wish. I think what I'll do in future is we'll have a private discussion where people have invested into this discussion where we can share some of the stuff. Because the one thing I will mention, is, for example, I went to a few feminist meetings to listen to what they are saying. I actually spoke to members of judiciary off record. I don't want to go too
Hmm.
deep. I'm sure you've done also a lot of work that you don't make public, to get into this stuff. But there's a lot of stuff that's not being said that your lawyer will never tell you. Never.
Right.
But the important part of the psychology is when, so a little girl is promised that she's going to have her Prince Charming. right? She grows up, she's not getting the Prince Charming who takes care of all her needs. So the next best thing is you. Because you still believe in that story. Because you were focused, while she was reading, teen magazine and whatever,
Hmm.
and I'm gonna show you something in a moment. You were focused on playing with your cars. You were building, Legos, building software, doing wrestling, doing judo, playing football. You were not thinking about girls. You were not thinking about relationships. And you were told girls are good. So what did you have to worry about? Do you see what I'm saying? But all that time, she was being told by fathers like Frank, if he's not ready to jump through hoops, he's not worthy of you. And you now saw her, you were like, oh wow, I must impress her, I must prove myself to her, and so on and so forth. So you were being set up by society, not necessarily on purpose, whether on purpose or not, it doesn't matter. You were set up to think she is good, she is great, I have nothing to worry about. If something goes wrong, it's me. Right? So when you go to court, they know this. So when if it hits you for the
Mm,
first time during a
mhm,
hearing, you understand?
mhm,
During a
mhm.
hearing, that you are not as valuable, you are being devalued. Somebody's talking about you, you did this and that, as if the lawyer was there, she saw it and like watched it happen, and you're like, that never happened. And then you can't even object to it. You can't say anything because any outburst will be used against you, And that's
And
just
you're
like one
shocked, and
time
you're not that good at reacting quickly to the lying. Most men
to
are
the
not.
lion.
That's an entire
Yeah,
communication skill you have to develop, which I
yes,
teach in my episodes of number 11 on my YouTube video. I teach how to detect the lying quickly because you have 10 seconds to react to a lie and
e-
contradict it.
exactly. And then
Yeah.
when she is being cross-examined and she's lying, and there's so many things. And the truth is, because you said you talk about 14 hours of videos.
Yes.
I don't want anybody to say that's too much work. Because believe me, your opposition was trained from childhood. Your
Yeah.
opposition has a whole machinery and the state working on their behalf. Because before I want to show you a slide. Um, the whole machinery is working against you. Because imagine this, Father X, let me ask you this. Imagine you are playing a game, right? Let's say you're playing a
Hmm.
game of chess, right? So I have the queen here, I have the king, right?
Hmm.
I'm sure you've heard that some people cheat in chess, right? You've heard of that.
Cheat?
Yes, like in chess tournaments.
I don't know that much about it.
Okay, well, people cheat. Let's say in athletics, do people cheat by taking, let's say, steroids and things
Yes.
like that?
Yes.
Why do they cheat?
Because they can't compete on their own, and become the winner, or because they think everybody else is cheating and they need to outperform the other cheaters.
Okay, would you say that the system cheats on behalf of mothers?
Yes.
Why do they cheat on behalf of mothers?
Why?
Yes.
Um, there's multiple reasons, not one, but one is I'm biased. Let's say I'm a judge. I'm biased and I hate men, so it makes me feel better anytime I can screw over a man in a courtroom.
Hmm.
Number two is I have 1,000 cases to do this year. I don't have time to review them all. I don't have the intelligence to review them all. So if I just rubber stamp the mother on each one really fast, I can get through my cases a lot faster, and at
Okay.
speed. And the third one is I don't know the parents and I don't know the children. So if I make a bet and I say on the first day of court or the second day of court, I don't know anything, but I'm going to give primary parenting time to the father, and something bad happens, all of society will come down on me and tell me I'm a bad judge. But if I give custody to the mother and then something bad happens, everybody will look at the mother and think, wow, what's wrong with her? The judge did the right thing. Mother should have custody. So there's less risk.
Okay. So what happens if they stop cheating?
The system slows down dramatically.
But what happens to the decisions that will come at the end of the court hearings? What kind of decisions might be made?
Equal parenting time from day one, from the start. If you
Okay.
stop cheating, it's equal parenting from day one. And then you figure out what the right answer is if somebody should have more parenting time.
But why do they have to cheat though?
Um, why? All of those reasons are selfish for me as a judge.
Yes, but in practical terms, because if fathers are truly so bad, wouldn't it be easy? Wouldn't you be able to accomplish the same result without cheating?
Slower, I guess.
Here's what I'm driving at. If,
Yeah.
let's say, I'm running against you, and I take some kind of dope to make me run faster, if I don't take it, you will win the race, right? That's why I have to
Right.
cheat. So that means if they stop cheating, more fathers would win.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so why would more fathers win?
Because in general, overall, according to decades of psychology, single fathers produce better outcomes than single mothers in their children's
Okay,
lives.
so that's what I'm driving at. The
Yeah.
reality is we are
Yeah.
taught that we are the bad ones, but perhaps we are the good ones. And not
That's
only
an
that,
excellent point.
and also we are the powerful ones. Without cheating, you can't win against me. You have to
Yes.
cheat, you have to lie. Otherwise, you can't go against the prophecy. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
The only way
That's
is
fair.
to cheat.
Yeah, that's fair. Because let me give you a percentage, Jean Paul. That you make a great point, because I've thought about that deeply too. The science and psychology tells us that the children that do best in terms of all metrics, like better in school, better at grades, no drugs as teenagers, no pregnancies as teenagers, no self-deleting or ending your life as a teenager, the best results in those metrics is two-parent households. The second best result, slightly worse than that, not much worse, slightly worse, is single fathers. And the third outcome, much worse results, is single mothers, much worse, easily. So the way I look at it, Jean Paul, on that point, I love math, right? Everything is a math equation. What is the world and what it should be? The world right now is one out of 100% of the people that go to family court. 55% of the time, this is one study that was done in the United States. I don't think it's perfectly accurate, but in general, these numbers hold. 55% of the time, the mother gets primary parenting time. 55%. 30% of the time, it's equal parenting time. And 15% of the time, the father gets primary parenting time, roughly. And like, if you look at that metric and you step back and you think, what should the outcome be? Well, the correct outcome for all of society in aggregate, what makes sense? I propose 60% of the time, you should have equal shared parenting after divorce or separation. 20% of the time, the father should have primary parenting time. And 20% of the time, it should be the mother who has primary parenting time. Because I'm willing to believe that 20% of the time, the dad is just a terrible dad. And 20% of the time, the mother is just a terrible mother.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you see the difference between what it is, right? 55% of the mothers get custody versus 15% of dads. It should be 20% each getting primary. Imagine the structural change that we need. So if you actually had metrics and you compare the reality versus what should be, like, it's very different. And I would go a step further. What you talked about is that single father outcomes are better. So I told you that I think 60% of the time it should be equal parenting, and 20% of the time the father should have primary. I could be willing to believe that fathers after separation should have primary custody 30% of the time, or 40%, according to all the psychology analysis that says single fathers are better. It's possible. It's very possible. I mean, right? But it's either way, it's very different than today's garbage outcomes where only 15% of dads. Yeah.
Yes, because mind you, and I'm gonna change the topic quickly because I'm conscious of time. If they give fathers that much custody, let's say there's 100,000 cases, right, every year, like we said. And I spoke about it in my last video, actually. And over the 5 years, let's say there's 500,000 cases. If we have 300,000 mothers who are not the primary parent, guess what? They have to go to work. Do they want to do that? Do you see what I'm saying? Do they have the qualifications? Do they have the degrees? I mean, that's taking us into a whole different direction, which, perhaps on
Yeah.
another time. But I think there's a whole lot of social, political, and economic implications that the governments are basically saying, you know what, let these men do the dirty work of cleaning up for us. Do you see what I'm saying? And I
That's an
think
interesting point.
men,
So who orchestrates
yeah,
that? Who would orchestrate that decision and thinking and strategy? Because I don't think family court judges have the
no, it's
intelligence
not.
to think it. It's higher,
Like I said, I have to give credit where it's due. I've met some wonderful judges,
right?
and I really have. I really have. So I cannot, and some of them did not even give me the outcomes I wanted, but I have to be like, you know what, that was fair. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes it's like, okay, you were fair. So I'll give credit. There are some good judges. However, you see, the family court is not broken. In the United States, in Canada, in India, in United Kingdom, in Australia, the
Hmm.
prime minister, the president, whoever, the Ministry of Justice can make a directive saying to the courts, here's a memo, everybody. From today on, we want more fathers to have custody. Guess what? Like that, it's going to change. The same system, the same laws, the same people.
Yeah,
Do you get what I'm saying? So it's not
yeah.
the family court. The family court is a tool. And that's another thing that, we are going deeper than we have time for. But another thing to understand is the court is just a system, it's an ecosystem. So it's like a game, like when you play
Hmm.
Call of Duty or whatever. It's just the environment, or like Roblox or Minecraft or whatever, but with constraints. But you have to know how to maneuver within those constraints. But it's not, if the judge gets a memo that, look, we need this statistics change, believe me, the statistic will change. So I want to
Because you're
quickly
saying that
show,
the
yeah,
laws, you're basically saying, if that's true, the laws are flexible and they could make sense. It's what people say, that the laws have to change. They say that very
no,
often. I don't think that's necessarily true. It would help. I see it a little bit differently. The real thing is the process. The process
yes,
and how they execute the laws has to change. And so if I'm going to
they,
change the laws, I would change the laws to handcuff judges so they can't make bad decisions.
yes, but you don't have to change the law. There's a good book called The Rule of Law. I think
Hmm.
it's by Tom Bingham, who was a judge. I think he was a High Court judge or Supreme Court judge in the UK. I'm not sure which. Brilliant. That book changed my life. When I read that book, I knew what to do. Obviously, when I say what to do, I knew the direction in which to go. I highly recommend that you read that book, The Rule of Law, because it shows how the legal system in the English-speaking countries, and not, well, in others as well, but mostly English-speaking countries, how the law started. So he starts from the point where there was no written laws, all the way to Magna Carta and so forth, and how we have today's laws. So when you read that, you understand that the system is essentially still yet another tool in the state's toolbox. And when you grasp
Mm-hmm.
that, that's when you can figure out, you don't take it so personal, and you start figuring out, how do I maneuver this thing? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. You made a great
So,
point before, Jean Paul, that I don't
mhm,
want to let go. You made a
mhm,
great point about reading case law,
yeah,
right? And in my YouTube series, I number my videos, episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, up to like 14 now, and still
yes,
going. But I have episodes 10 that talk about case law. And John Paul, you talked about, I wanted to appeal my case, and my lawyer said only 2% succeed. So you don't want to do that, but you succeeded. There's a
yeah,
very fundamental thing that many people do not understand about the law, because why would they know if they're not in the law? But
mhm,
first, there are rules in the law, and then there's the interpretation of those rules and how to
yes,
apply them. There's lower court judges who implement,
yes,
family court decisions. Above them is appellate courts, and above
yes,
that might be a court of appeals. They have different names, but there's a
yes,
hierarchy.
yes, yes,
Everybody
there
who
is.
appealed judges' decisions go to one higher level up, and then maybe
Correct.
one higher level up. All of those courts, whenever they make a rule, all of society has to follow that rule, even the lower
Correct.
court judges, right?
Yes,
I found,
yes,
and I think you found the same thing. I read hundreds of decisions about parenting time, child custody issues, as well as child support. And I realized one major thing is the lower courts actively ignore the law and the
Correct.
rules of SEPA. They
Correct.
actively ignore
Correct.
them because they're not that hard. Because I learned after 1 year of reading, I was in court for 3 years. After about 1 year, I read so much appellate law that I was smarter than my judge, my lawyer, and the mother's lawyer at how family court is supposed to work according to the higher
Yeah.
courts. It's not
Yeah.
hard,
Yeah.
right?
The-
So they
yes.
ignore it. So one thing that I teach Jean Paul is in the appeals process, and you can see this in my episodes 10, it's you have to know the rules of the game, like Jean Paul said earlier. Imagine this. Imagine that the law says parenting time, the majority of parenting time will go to the parent who's better educating the, and that's it. That's the only criteria,
Yeah.
nothing else,
Yeah.
education.
Yeah.
Well, if you go to court, what's the legal question? Am I better educating my child than the mother is, or are we equal? That's the legal question. So if you think
Yes.
you're better, now you have to prove that you're better at educating your child, which means
Yes.
when you testify, you have to testify about the amount of times you read to your child, the number of days a week you do homework with your child after school, the times you meet the teachers and go to school and participate in that. Make sure that you take the child to school instead of leaving them home, right? Those are relevant things. However, if I go to court and I start testifying, I should have primary parenting time because I'm better at teaching basketball to my child than the mother is. And I have nicer clothing and I speak 4 languages instead of 2. Therefore, I should have custody. All of that is not meaningful. It's all irrelevant. The only thing that's relevant is what's in the law. So
Yes.
if you want to appeal the way the appellate court looks at it, did the lower court judge apply the correct law? So in your case, if the mother testifies and says she is better at basketball and she has a very nice smile and she has nice shoes, and the judge says, I'm giving the mother custody because she has nice shoes and a nice smile. Well, that's stupid. That's not what the law says. So now the judge
Yeah.
abused the law, violated the law. So you have to appeal to the higher court and say the judge applied the law incorrectly. And in order to do that, in your case, you have to present all the evidence and testimony that you are a better educational parent so that the appellate court can see that and say, wait a minute,
Yes.
you proved your case. Right? That's like fundamentally, that's how the appeals work. Most people fail at the appellate courts, 98% fail. I think it's a lot of it is because they don't create their case be at the trial level to prove that they are that better parent in the criteria that's required.
That's correct. But you see, the thing in the UK is there's a standard of parenting called good enough. So once the parent is good enough, everything else becomes irrelevant. So
That's
even if,
fair.
let's say,
Fair.
however, the principle is still the same. There is a higher court decision, and the lower courts must follow it. So what I did was, before I even made my application, before I applied to court, I said, let me learn all the rules that are relevant to what I'm doing. And then I was just making notes as they were breaking them. And they gave me enough material to work with to go to the higher court. So my point is, I didn't wait for them to make a mistake before deciding to appeal. I was already getting ready for the appeal before I even went to court.
Yes.
You see what I'm
Smart.
saying?
Smart.
You understand? So we'll go into this deeper another time because this is one of the key strategies. But I want to show you a slide. So if you would be so kind to read the slide, and then when you want to make a thought or say something about it, then you stop and then we hear that. And the reason why I want you to read that is I spoke because people will think it's a conspiracy theory. So this is just one of the people who support mothers in court behind the scenes, encouraging the mother to essentially, from my perspective, paint the father as an alienator. So this is somebody who supports women in court, telling the mother what to do on an online forum before they've even gone to court, so that the fathers understand that by the time you've gone to court, the plan has already been made out to you. So here's the slide. Can you see it?
Yes. You want me to read it out
So,
loud?
yeah, if you'd be so kind. So just stop at any
Okay.
point you want to make a comment. Yeah.
Okay, so it says this is the woman who supports other women. Do not
Yes.
accept 50-50 without a fight and extensive safeguards being put in place. This is quite literally your children's lives at stake. And unsupervised contact is most definitely not in their best interests, and a matter of months does not change his um, life ending and murderous thoughts towards his children. Um, Interesting. That's a weird thing to say. I don't know the context, but let me keep going though. Let me read the rest of it,
Okay.
and then I'll comment. His
Yeah.
comments are parental alienation and need recording and bringing up at the next court appearance. Do you think hiding things is going to benefit the children in any way? Do not think hiding things is going to benefit the children in any way. In my experience of supporting women predominantly and children in these situations, pushing for supervised contact for as long as possible, parenting classes, as well as accessing mental health support is highly advised. Building up, if compliant, to overnights over an extended time scale in the hope that any issues appear. Wow. If compliant, to overnights over an extended time scale in the hope that any issues appear before the final order. Um,
Yeah. And this is
uh,
before court, mind you.
yes. So a couple of things. I've worked with a couple of domestic violence shelters for women. Not worked as a job, but I've heard from them, communicated with them, and I kind of know how those people think. So in this, what
Mm-hmm.
you just said, there's some lady telling a mother, don't settle for 50-50 because the father's abusive, blah blah blah. What happens in this culture with those people, those female advisors, is they just always assume that the woman must be a victim and the man must be the perpetrator. If a woman
Yes.
says the father abused me or hit me, then it's automatically believed, which is incompetent, right? Because in reality, men abuse women in a relationship, or women abuse men, or they abuse each other, or
Yes.
somebody's lying about it. It's four scenarios, right?
Yes.
So if you just assume that the woman is telling the truth, then you completely have no sense of reality. You have to figure out what reality is. So that lady's point of view is assuming that the mother's telling the truth, which we don't know. Never assume that.
Yeah.
Never, ever. She's
Yeah.
also talking about do not accept 50-50 without safeguards in place, 50-50 parenting time.
Yeah.
Well, it's a little bit illogical to think if the other parent is such a danger to the child, like if the other parent abused me or hit me, it doesn't mean that they're going to hit the child. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But there's also negative impacts if the child sees that parent hitting somebody else in the future in a
Yes.
relationship,
Definitely.
right? So it's a complicated thing to think about. But the thing is, if you think the person is such a danger, what you want them to have parenting time, not 50% of the time, but 25%, they can hurt your child in 10 minutes. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter if they have 20% parenting time or 50. So if you really think the person is a danger, really, then it should be 0%, right?
Yeah.
Because over
Yeah.
time, like you don't know, like if they see the child this weekend, today Saturday, tomorrow Sunday, they could cause harm this weekend, but over a period of time, over 10 weekends, they might harm the child once or twice. Who knows? It's a
Yes.
mathematical equation. So she's arguing for supervised visitation.
Yes.
um, that's really a control mechanism,
Correct.
because whenever you're successful in defrauding a judge into thinking the other parent is dangerous or violent and they need supervised visitation, now
Yes.
the other parent is on a scale of 0 to 100, where 50-50 is equal, or if the 50-point mark is the middle. The judge is not starting with both people at 50 in the middle. The judge is
No.
starting with at 20, right? So now you have
Yes.
to earn your way over a year to be considered equal, right?
Correct.
And
Correct.
supervised visitation, I don't like that concept. I did not experience it myself, so it's hard for me to understand. I've never seen any standard as to when can a judge order supervised visitation or when is it frivolous. I don't know what the rules are. I mean, we at a high level, a parent's dangerous, give them supervised visitation. Well, what does that mean? Any judges can interpret that differently, I think.
Yeah,
So
yes. So
I don't think that there's a standard application. It's weird.
yeah. So I experienced that. So I had to pay about $200 per hour in a contact center. To give credit where it's due, in the beginning, Kafka's paid for me because again, I understood the stuff that you and I teach. You understand? There's a lot more to it than fathers don't know. So I actually got them to pay for it. In the beginning and later I had to start paying because long story I can't go into all the details, but in the beginning for several months they just paid, you understand, over £200 per hour, $200 per hour. So it was like $250 $300 per hour because it was almost £200. So in
That's
dollars terms that would be
crazy.
like, yeah. But then that's another thing that fathers need to know. How do you charm the contact center workers? How do you charm the social workers so that they start fighting for you?
Yes.
You need things like that in court, which is
You
what I
have to do
teach as
that.
well.
You have to do that.
You have to do that, and I'm assuming it's the same where you are. That you have to get the social workers on your side, and that takes time and knowledge. But so if you notice, she was saying extend the time, because what happens is after 9 months of this, the judge says, "Oh, it turns out the father is not dangerous. Judge, excuse me, it looks like the child has forgotten about the father, is not comfortable with him, so it's not safe to suddenly push the father on him." Do you see what I'm saying? And it continues. So the father is then blindsided with, yeah, sorry, you're not an abuser, but the child is not comfortable with you because the child has got a routine now. They go to basketball on Saturday, so you can't see them on Saturday. Do you see what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yes.
So now the father has to fight for crumbs to
Yes.
rebuild the relationship. So by the time the father gets the first overnight stay, it could be 2, 3, 4 years if they are not prepared by someone like you and me. And even with that, it could still be the case if the allegations are strong enough. So that's why it's so important to prepare ahead of time. But the key point I'm trying to make here, and I want to hear the rest of your thoughts, is all this that you just read out is before she's gone to court. So they've already planned out. But my
Yes.
point from earlier, the lawyer is not going to tell you this. Do you see what I'm
That's right.
saying? The mother is getting this information, but your lawyer is not telling you. So please go on and with your thoughts on this.
You are totally right that a lot of people plan this ahead of time, and this is how they plan it with advice of other people who know how to manipulate the system. And you know what? What people should know also is when my ex went to court the very first day, I moved out because she was too violent for me to live with. She went to court and requested a restraining order, and she said, Father X did this, he did that, he did this. She just made a couple of statements on a piece of paper. And when she appeared in front of a judge alone, because I was not there, the judge said, "Are those statements here that you say, are they true?" And the mother said, "Yes." And the judge said, "Okay, then I'll give you a restraining order." That was it. That's all it takes. It's easier than getting a Big Mac at McDonald's.
It's very similar to what happens here. And by the way, the lawyer gets paid at least $1,500, $200, or $2,000 just for that.
That's
And if the mother
unbelievable.
doesn't have the money, the legal aid will cover it. So so that's where people need to understand that a lot of these things sounds like conspiracy theories, but it's a reality that you don't want to wait to hit you till when it's too late.
Yeah.
So the way I'll end our session today is I want to ask you just a couple more questions. So the main question I want to ask you is, what is the number one biggest mistake you see fathers make when it comes to these family court cases?
Number one. I like to think, Jean Paul, about the Rubik's Cube. And do you remember the Rubik's Cube with 6 sides and one is blue,
Yeah,
one's
yeah.
orange, one's yellow?
Actually, I'm trying to figure it out as we speak. I was actually going to have it here, but
Okay.
yeah, yeah. So I'm
So in
working on
any
it now.
situation, there's like a Rubik's Cube has 6 sides and 6 colors, and each side has 9 little squares. So I
Yes.
don't like to talk about one thing. I always think about I need to know the big picture, all of it, because all the pieces matter. But there's a couple of
Yes.
big mistakes that happen. Um, I'll say it at a high level. Number one is not knowing the law or how to operate in family court, and number two is communication.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Number one is you don't know the law, you don't know what you're supposed to prove. Because you don't know what you're supposed to prove, you don't know what to say in family court at the little mini hearings. You don't know what to testify about. You don't know what your testimony is supposed to prove. You don't know what evidence to bring to prove that, right?
Yes.
And then you don't know how to force the judge to. I call it cornering and controlling the judge with facts. I did that I
Mm-hmm.
testified for 28 hours over the
Wow.
course of 1 year for my direct testimony. And it was all cornering and controlling the judge because I knew the law. So you have to learn
Yes.
that. And I teach that on my channel. Number two is
Yes.
communication. Communication is so important. I think in general, psychologists, I think there's studies that say women use 1 million words a day and men use like 500 words a day. Have you seen those studies?
Yes.
I don't know what the numbers
Yeah, yeah,
are.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen some of them. Some of them
Yeah.
are nonsense. Some of them are good.
Yeah, so the idea is that women are much better communicators than men because they
Yeah.
talk a lot more and they practice a lot more. But when you're in the courtroom, I think in general, men are terrible at communicating the facts that they need to communicate to a judge and to the lawyers to convince them of what the truth is or what you see
Yes.
reality as. They're pretty
Yes.
terrible. And I can give you a
Yes.
quick example. I want to give you a
Yes.
quick example, actually.
Yes.
Um, let's say you're the father and you're testifying in communication. First you have to recognize who you're communicating to, and it's a
Mm-hmm.
judge, and it could also
Mm-hmm.
be the mother's lawyer, but let's focus on the judge. Okay, what does
Mm-hmm.
that mean? Well, I've already told you judges are really dumb, they're incompetent, they're not smart at all, and they're gender biased against dads. It's very important to
Correct.
know. So when you speak to
Yes.
them, you can't expect them to figure out a puzzle because they're too lazy
Yes.
and dumb. And if you tell them a
Yes.
story, they're because they're biased against men. What does that mean? It means if I tell you a story, they're going to interpret it as starting point is the mother must be good and the father must be bad. So no matter what
Correct.
you tell me, I will conclude somehow that the mother is good and the father is bad or wrong. Unless you drive me over with a truck or hit me over the head with a brick to really, really convince me that the father is the good one and the mother is the bad one,
Yes.
right?
Very
So
true.
that's starting point. And it's not true 100% of the time, but probably like 80% of the time.
Yeah.
So if you go into court, the mother has already testified that in January, one day in January, you assaulted her and you abused her, and she was very vague and not specific about actual details, but she was very vague, and it was kind of confusing. Well, the judge now thinks she's a victim just because she said so.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to
Mm-hmm.
court and you testify, well, I didn't hit her. That's not true what she said. She hit
Mm-hmm.
me. She hit me. Period. Then I finish.
Yeah.
Well, that's vague.
That's vague.
So
Yeah.
I lost, right? So if the mother is a victim of abuse, she wins. If it's a tie, both parents abuse each other, she wins. If the father is a victim of abuse, well, maybe sometimes he wins. Most of the time, let's say maybe he wins if he really proves
Yeah.
it. Um,
Correct.
so you have to convince the judge that the woman is the abuser. You have to convince a judge that it's not mutual, right? So even if you
Mm-hmm.
say it's not true, she hit me, and the judge thinks maybe it was mutual, you lost,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I did, for example, one quick piece of testimony that I did, it took me like an hour and a half to testify about this one incident because I went step by step in detail. But the short
Mm-hmm.
version is I was in the kitchen and she was angry and screaming, and I couldn't get out of the kitchen. There's only one entrance, and she was standing at the
Yeah.
entrance. and behind me was
Yes.
the stove and the refrigerator. I can't go anywhere. So
Yeah.
that's important. And she threw 4 or 5 punches at my head, and I blocked 4 or 5
Whoa.
punches. And and I described it. I'm talking about it the way I testified. It was a windmill right hand punch from the top of her head to the top of my head, and a windmill left hand punch from the top of
Hmm.
her head to the top of my head. And it's coming on top of my head. So I block it with my right forearm. I block a left punch. I lift my right forearm to block the other
Yes.
punch right over my head. And I'm describing how I have to lift up my forearms to block one punch, a second punch, a third punch, a fourth punch. And then she stops punching because her right leg steps back and she looks at my lower body. And I
Yes.
see energy moving into her right leg, which tells me that a kick is coming. So now she throws a kick and I see it, and her body language tells me it's coming. She throws a kick. I drop my left arm down to block the kick. And then I grab her by the shoulders and I push her backwards into the living room. There was an air mattress on the floor of the living room, which I had
Mm.
described earlier. And I pushed her onto the floor of the air mattress and I stepped back. And as I testified, I said, I thought she would stay down because hitting me was useless and pointless. I thought she would just stay down, knowing she was overpowered. So I went back to the kitchen, hoping she would stop. And my lawyer asked me, what happened next? And I said, well, she stood up and she came back into the kitchen. And I couldn't get out because she was at the entrance. And she threw another 4 punches and a kick. And I did the same block a kick. Now, when I told that detail, it tells you a few important things, Jean Paul, right?
Hmm.
When I go through step by step, every single thing that happened without leaving out steps, I'm telling the judge she was the only one throwing punches. She was
Yes.
the only one throwing kicks. I was blocking punches and I was blocking kicks. In order to make her stop, I didn't punch her in the stomach. I didn't push her down to the ground. I grabbed her by the arms and threw her onto an air mattress, which is like a safety place. I didn't want to hurt her.
And,
I threw her into a
and,
safe
and, so,
place.
and sorry to
Yeah.
cut you, but in the UK court, that action might have been twisted around and used against you. But please carry on. I can explain
Yes,
after.
that's right. No, no, and we'll talk about that. We
Yes.
should talk about that. So, and then when I talked about how after the air mattress on the floor, she stood up and she came back, that demonstrates that she was the primary aggressor, continually seeking aggressive violence, and I was not.
Hmm.
I retreated, right? So, what you want to show that she was violent, that you were not, and that it was not
Yeah.
mutual. And how do you do
Yeah.
that? I show that I didn't throw punches. I show that only she threw punches. It's important to show that you stepped back. It's important to
Yeah.
show that you retreated to another room. And it's
Yes.
important to show that the
Yes.
other person pursued you. All of those
Correct.
details, when you start piling them on, like it's hard for the judge to hide, which is very different than what I told you a few minutes ago, where my testimony was, no, I didn't hit her. She hit me.
Correct. Correct.
Right.
Correct. And what's worse is a lot of fathers just get angry. It's like she's lying. I didn't do this. You know, they just start bursting out,
Right.
and then they're
Yeah,
like, "There you
I did
go."
storytelling. Storytelling is a very important part of this whole thing
Yeah.
because you have to
Yeah.
tell a story that somebody understands and that somebody believes. It helps if it's a true story, obviously. Like the reason I was able to tell those stories is because they were totally true. But even though they were true, I could have easily failed if I didn't know how to tell the story in such an overwhelming way to the judge.
Yes. Yes. But Father X, you have to forgive me. We are out of time.
Yeah.
I wish we could continue longer because we are now getting to the more exciting part. So I think there must be a part 2 of this. So hopefully I'll be able to hunt you down to do that. So before we end it, what's your last piece of advice and where can people find you?
An important piece of advice is to learn everything you can about how family court works. I want you guys to think, if anybody remembers World War II, right? World War II was a complicated war that took place in Asia and in Europe and, partly in the Americas. There's different
Yes.
theaters. And then in each place, there's air war and land war and sea war,
Yes.
right? That's it's complicated. Family court is the same way. there's just a whole bunch of different battles in different places with different people. So you have to mastermind an entire war strategy. And what I try to
Correct.
teach you with my 50 or so videos, 15 minutes each, I do them piece by piece. So I highly encourage people, go to YouTube. It's youtube.com/@FatherX2022. Father X, How Fathers Can Win Child Custody. I'm teaching dads all the pieces of the war. You can find me on Spotify podcasts or Apple Podcasts or Rumble and learn all of it. Like, I want you guys outsmarting your judge. I think that if you watch 14 hours of my videos, you'll be smarter than the judge and all the lawyers in your case.
Yes.
But it's just the beginning. There's still more work to do. I'm just teaching you how to think and how to begin to do the work that you have to do. But it's your case and your facts, and you have a lot of work to do. So watch my videos and learn how to do it.
Yes, and what I want to say is usually when you're waiting for the next hearing, you have a month or two. So even if you watch a video, 30 minutes a day, for a month, you get through the video. So if you think it's a lot, don't think that is beyond what you can do. And if you don't watch these videos, you may end up being one of the fathers who's complaining. And I don't want you to be complaining. I want you to win. And that's why I bring you the prophecy and I bring you the truth. I know Father X is one of the best guys. I would argue when it comes to family court coaching, I've not come across anybody else better. If you are listening, probably I have recommended him to you already if you live in the United States. So Father X, thank you so much for spending this time with us. And I will find you wherever you hide. So Radio Alert, here I come. And we have to do part two because there's so much more we have to cover, and there are we don't have enough people who are honest enough, sharing what happens. So do you quickly want to say anything else before you go?
No, I look forward to talking some more. And it's great being on the show and talking to you again, John Paul. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to take us out. So yes, so I bring you yet another piece of the prophecy, another piece of the puzzle. This is John Paul, the prophecy, coming to you from bravefathers.com. Stay strong, stay powerful. You are a father. You are the rock on which the society is built. So thank you for watching, and I'm gonna see you again soon.
bravefathers.com